When you hear stories about abandoned schools, it seems like just fiction. But what if the legends are a warning? Today, I will tell you about a group of teenagers who dared to enter the basement of an old school, abandoned many years ago. They were searching for answers, but they encountered something much more terrifying than they could have imagined. It was already dark outside when Max and his friends gathered at the entrance of the old school. Each of them had their own reason for being there: a challenge, curiosity, or a desire to impress. It was late, but the unsettling anticipation only fueled their excitement. The school corridors seemed like endless mazes. The wooden floor creaked under every step, and the air was thick with the strange smell of dampness and decay. As they made their way toward the basement stairs, Lisa noticed strange symbols like runes on the walls. "Do you think these symbols mean anything?" she asked Kira, who was skilled at reading strange markings, but even she shook her head. "There are too many mistakes here for it to mean something." Max, unwilling to waste any more time, moved forward and decisively pushed open the door leading to the basement. When the door opened, a cold, muffled sigh rose from the depths, as if the space itself carried the memories of the past. The flashlights revealed rough concrete steps covered in dust and cobwebs. Dan felt a strange unease settle over him, but he didn't dare speak it aloud. The first room of the basement turned out to be a lab, cluttered with scraps of paper and broken equipment. Lisa took a dark jar from a shelf, the contents of which appeared to be a thick black liquid, strangely shimmering in the light. "Put that down," Max snapped, feeling that something was off. A hollow echo rolled through the basement, as if someone had fallen to the floor above. But the school was empty. Or was it? Everyone felt it at once. The air grew heavier, the shadows deepened. In the distance, a faint, dragging sound could be heard, the scratching of nails on concrete. As the group moved further, everything around them became more chaotic. The corridors twisted. The stairs led to places they hadn't expected. The flashlight's beam began to feel insufficient, and the surrounding darkness seemed to come alive, stretching toward them. They reached a massive metal door, smeared with rust-streaked handprints. The door creaked open, almost as if it wanted to let them in. Inside was another room, strangely clean, as if someone had been maintaining order here. When Kira inspected the room, her gaze fell upon a red box with a lock. Using a lever she found nearby, she opened it and discovered an old video camera with recorded footage. When they turned it on, they saw a blurry image of a figure running in this very room, but the recording suddenly cut off with a terrifying scream. A clear whisper echoed from the depths of the basement. Lisa squinted into the darkness, trying to determine where it was coming from. The sound seemed to beckon them forward. Max suggested leaving the basement, but the others were too intrigued. Suddenly, the entire basement shook with a sharp noise, as if the door behind them had slammed shut with great force. Dark silhouettes began to appear on the walls. "Do you see that?" Dan yelled, directing his flashlight at one of them. The silhouette slowly moved, becoming more than just a reflection. It started to materialize into a giant human figure, with long arms and a featureless face. The creature did not move, but stared at them with its black pits where eyes should have been. Then it vanished, leaving only a long, eerie trail on the dusty floor. Lisa screamed, struggling to hold herself together. "We need to leave," she exclaimed, but no one moved. Trying not to look at the walls filled with bizarre, moving shadows, Max gestured for his friends to follow him. They moved further down the winding corridor until they came upon another door. Strange symbols, similar to those they had seen above, were etched into the door, but now they faintly glowed. The door creaked open, revealing a huge room filled with tables stacked with tools and glass capsules. Several of the capsules had been broken, with rusty shards protruding from within. Something lived in these capsules, or is still alive, Dan nervously joked, but no one laughed. Their footsteps echoed throughout the room when Kira noticed the remnants of an old inscription on the wall. On a faded poster, the words, "Experiment 34 completed, results unstable," were written. But the words had been crossed out by red marks that looked like bloody streaks. Suddenly, from one of the capsules came a noise, quiet but distinct. It sounded like a deep rumbling, followed by a short, almost mechanical breath. The group froze, barely daring to breathe. Then, Lisa pointed to the far corner of the room. Something was moving, hidden in the shadows. The figure emerged from the darkness. It appeared humanoid, but much larger than a normal person. Its skin gleamed like wet metal, and its eyes shone with a white light. The creature did not move, only staring directly at the group, filling each of them with indescribable terror. "Run!" Max shouted suddenly, but it was too late. The creature leaped with incredible speed, closing the distance between them in an instant. Lisa screamed, pointing to the exit, but the way back had already vanished. A dark mass had blocked the corridor, like a living shadow. They scattered in different directions, trying to find shelter. Kira hid behind a broken table, trying to calm her rapid breathing. Max noticed a hatch in the floor that no one had seen before and called out to the others, just as the creature pursued Dan. Struggling to move the hatch, they descended to an even deeper level of the basement. The new corridor was filled with the foul stench of decay, and the walls were covered in something resembling organic growths. It was as if liquid pulsed through them, like a circulatory system of a living organism. The creature was no longer visible, but that did not bring relief. Lisa could hear a faint, chilling breath coming from somewhere above. Max whispered to calm everyone, assuring them they would find a way out, though his own hands were shaking. After walking a little further, they came across a massive steel door. It was locked, but from within came a heavy sound, like someone scratching at the metal surface. "Whatever's inside, it definitely doesn't want to see us," Max muttered. Suddenly, a horrible wail filled the space. It sounded unnatural, a mixture of pain, fear, and something that couldn't be explained. The flashlight beams flickered, leaving them nearly in total darkness. Something shifted beneath their feet. The floor began to vanish, transforming into a viscous, sticky substance. The monster reappeared, but this time it was not alone. A group of similar creatures followed it, but their bodies seemed to be covered with tattered scraps of skin, from which strange mechanical mechanisms protruded. These monsters moved slowly, surrounding the group. Max, gathering his strength, found a lever on the door and pulled it to open it. The others rushed to him, dodging the creature's long, eerie claws. When the door opened, they all fell into a new hall, closing the passage behind them. The new room turned out to be a space filled with strange shelves, covered with countless jars. Inside them were frozen fragments of creatures, heads, claws, eyes. Each of them seemed to be watching the teens, as if following their every move. Lisa noticed a strange device next to one of the shelves that resembled an old radio transmitter. When she switched it on, a terrifying voice sounded. "You've gone too far. Your time is running out." The words echoed, and the shelves began to shake. The monsters began to claw through the closed door. Now it was clear. They weren't going to let the teens go. In desperation, Max found a new hatch, and they ran down a ladder, moving toward the light. When they emerged, the world above them was no longer the same. The school had vanished, and around them lay a lifeless wasteland with a howling wind. Dan turned around and noticed that the shadows from the basement were trailing after them, merging with the surrounding darkness. The wind grew colder, and the biting, icy chill froze their bodies. The sense of desperate fear grew stronger with each step as they pushed through the thick, foggy haze. A terrible itch at the back of their neck followed them, as though someone or something was watching their every movement. The shadows behind them hadn't disappeared. Now they began to move, dancing in the emptiness. "What the hell is this?" Dan shouted, noticing how the fog around their feet thickened and became viscous. Their feet sank into it, and every step became heavier. Kira tried to pull her foot out, but something was pulling her down. With each moment, the force grew stronger, and it seemed this unknown power was becoming a real threat. "Watch out," Max yelled, noticing a figure in the distance. It was a creature, an enormous silhouette with an incomprehensible mass of bodies, slowly moving toward them. It wasn't just one creature, it was several. They fused together, transforming into a terrifying singular form. Their movements were strange and unnatural, as if their bodies were broken and joined together in a chaotic mess. The monsters' bodies intertwined and broke apart, their heads twisting 360 degrees, and blood-curdling screams came from their mouths. Jolting, the teens continued running, but the terror pursued them relentlessly. Lisa ran into what seemed to be an old, collapsed bridge where one of the planks suddenly broke off, dragging her into the abyss below. "Lisa!" Max screamed, but it was too late. She vanished into the black void, and their eyes filled with horror as her figure disappeared. There was no longer any hope of escape. Lisa's screams grew fainter until they completely disappeared into the emptiness, and a suffocating silence settled in. Darkness swallowed everything. They were left only with the fog, the metallic scent of fear, and the distant growl of the eerie creatures. Shadows continued to move behind them, following their every step. The teens kept running until they were overwhelmed by the sensation that they couldn't escape. The corridor around them just didn't end. The walls started to close in, and the space grew tighter and tighter. Something crawled onto Kira's head, and in horror she saw hands, marked with ominous stains, crawling out of the wall and grabbing her. "Let go of me," she screamed, shaking off the terror, but the hands tightened. At that moment, everything happened instantly. A dark whirlwind, the door leading to another world, suddenly swung open. Shadows began to envelop Max's figure, and he felt a crushing energy consume him. The door slammed shut, and a dark passage suddenly appeared before him. But this wasn't just a passage. It was another world, dark and foreboding. Max couldn't stop, as if an invisible force was pushing him forward, regardless of his fear. He ran through this strange space, desperately seeking the exit. When he finally saw a faint light, it turned out to be the very maze they had passed through before. He tried to climb, but this space unexpectedly vanished, swallowing their light. When Max realized he was in a dark corridor of the old school, a monstrous figure appeared, a creature with bloody eyes and a broken jaw. Its deadly claws moved with unimaginable speed, and in a moment it would grab him. But then, several nearby doors opened, revealing new, terrifying secrets. Escape seemed hopeless, but Max pushed the monster away, rushing into the darkest void. Suddenly, he realized that the maze was starting to distort again, the passages becoming endless, time halting. It was as if he had been transported back to the school, trapped in this nightmare. Something scratched under his nails, as if entities were chasing him, crawling through the floor. Max screamed in panic. "What is this?" The shadows began to move after them, taking the form of grotesque figures. This nightmare wouldn't end. Beneath their feet, the gaze intertwined with fear. Water filled with filth. Only hope remained. The dark figures that had been chasing them began to compress and merge into something colossal. It had no distinct form but felt alive. It wasn't just an entity. It was the true embodiment of darkness, consuming light, freezing time and space around it. Max, pale from fear, felt his legs growing heavy, as though the earth was swallowing his body. Each step was a struggle. The monster moved faster, its ominous claws leaving bloody tracks on the floor, as if it were part of the darkness itself, an embodiment of terror. It extended its body toward them, closing the distance with each passing moment. Panic seized the teens. They could not run. They could not hide. And just as they were nearly suffocating from the dreadful atmosphere, Max heard a whistle in the dark, a terrifying, almost incomprehensible sound, like the cutting of metal. It was like an incantation. Black eyes gripped him, becoming glassy and impenetrable. Then a horrible screech echoed. The doors slammed shut. It seemed as though only the shadows remained. Once again, their eyes were captured by that eerie flickering. And then, when their hope of salvation had almost faded, they noticed a ray of light in the distance. A tiny window on the upper floor, where it seemed someone might still be alive. Only a few meters left to the exit. But how many dark creatures were stretching out their hands, wanting to touch them, to devour them? The group united, striving to move toward the exit. But something kept them from seeing that light. Meanwhile, in one corner of the basement, where the bravest had hidden, someone stopped, turned their eyes, and realized. All these terrifying moments were simply a script for a tragedy already written. The connection with the horrifying concept vanished, and no one acknowledged it. If you enjoyed this horrifying tale and want to uncover what lies in the darkness, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new terrifying stories. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and share it with your friends. Let them peek into this world of dreadful mysteries and curses. because horror always lurks in the most unexpected places. Stay with us as we shatter more myths about abandoned places.